I want to document this moment right here because this is insane, and I don't think I've ever been more appreciative, more grateful, and happier in my entire career. Getting to do.
Ronda Rousey's shocking return wasn't just another MMA fight night. It felt like a turning point for the entire sport, a moment so massive that even the commentators themselves struggled to contain their emotions while speaking live on air. The atmosphere surrounding the first-ever MMA event broadcast on Netflix carried a different kind of pressure, a different kind of energy, because everyone involved understood they were witnessing history unfold in real time. One commentator openly admitted he had never felt more grateful, more emotional, or more fulfilled during his entire career, and the tremble in his voice revealed just how deeply personal the moment truly was. This wasn't simply about calling fights or filling airtime for another combat sports card. This was about years of sacrifice, years of believing MMA could eventually become a fully mainstream global attraction, finally paying off on the biggest streaming platform in the world. Netflix brought the sport to hundreds of millions of viewers worldwide, many of whom had never watched an MMA event before, and that alone transformed the night into something far bigger than wins and losses inside the cage. The entire event carried the feeling of a dream becoming reality, not only for the fighters but also for everyone who had spent years helping MMA grow from a controversial niche sport into a global entertainment powerhouse. The commentator repeatedly emphasized how important it was to document this moment, almost as if he knew instantly that people would look back at this night years later as the beginning of a new era for combat sports. The emotional weight behind those words reflected how much the industry has evolved over the last decade, from struggling for legitimacy to commanding center stage on the world's largest streaming platforms. But while the historic Netflix debut created excitement and celebration, it also created enormous expectations. Fans wanted spectacle. They wanted unforgettable moments. They wanted drama worthy of the massive hype surrounding the event. And then came the fight everyone was waiting for. Ronda Rousey, once considered the most dominant woman in combat sports history, stepped back into the cage against Gina Carano in a matchup loaded with nostalgia, legacy, and unanswered questions. For many longtime fans, it felt surreal watching two pioneers of women's MMA standing across from each other on such a massive stage. The build-up promised emotion, redemption, and potentially one of the greatest comeback stories combat sports had ever seen. Gina Carano's journey back to the cage had become one of the central narratives surrounding the event. She had reportedly spent over a year rebuilding herself physically and mentally, losing massive amounts of weight, rediscovering her love for martial arts, and preparing for one final opportunity to prove herself under the brightest lights imaginable. The anticipation surrounding her return wasn't only about whether she could win. Fans simply wanted to see how far she had come. They wanted to witness her compete at a high level again after such a long absence. They wanted moments, exchanges, drama, and emotional payoff. Instead, everything ended almost instantly. In just 17 seconds, Ronda Rousey secured a devastating submission victory that sent shockwaves through the entire MMA world. The arena exploded, social media erupted, and millions watching from home struggled to process what they had just seen. Some fans viewed it as the ultimate statement performance, proof that Rousey still possessed the same killer instinct and elite-level ability that once made her the face of women's MMA. Others, however, felt underwhelmed. They had waited for a battle and instead received a blink-and-you-miss-it finish. The commentators themselves openly admitted understanding why some viewers felt disappointed. One even confessed he wished the fight had lasted at least 60 seconds longer so fans could truly see Gina Carano test herself and showcase her growth. That honesty added another emotional layer to the entire broadcast because it reflected the complicated reality of combat sports. Sometimes dominance can actually leave audiences unsatisfied. Sometimes greatness arrives too quickly for people to appreciate it properly. In a world driven by viral moments and social media reactions, the conversation surrounding the fight quickly became less about technical brilliance and more about entertainment value. That's where Jake Paul entered the picture. Known for stirring controversy and dominating online narratives, Jake Paul's reaction immediately fueled speculation and debate across the internet. Rumors spread that he had essentially dismissed or banned Ronda Rousey from relevance after the quick finish failed to deliver the prolonged spectacle many expected. Whether those claims were exaggerated or not, the controversy itself became part of the story, highlighting how modern combat sports are increasingly shaped by influencers, online personalities, and viral discourse rather than purely by athletic achievement. In today's entertainment landscape, perception matters almost as much as performance. A dominant 17-second victory can simultaneously be viewed as legendary by hardcore fans and disappointing by casual viewers searching for drama. That contradiction became the central theme surrounding the event. The Netflix platform amplified every single reaction, every criticism, and every hot take because the audience was so much larger and broader than traditional MMA broadcasts. Millions of casual viewers tuning in for the first time expected
We just wrapped up the very first MMA card on Netflix, the biggest streaming platform in the world. And I have to say, all day long, I was more emotional than anxious. Usually in these moments,
non-stop action and dramatic wars inside the cage. Instead, the main attraction ended before many could fully settle into their seats. Behind the scenes, the production team reportedly scrambled to adapt as multiple fights ended earlier than expected. Commentators were instructed through their earpieces to keep talking and stretch segments longer because the pacing of the show had completely shifted. Those behind-the-scenes moments revealed the unique challenges Netflix faced while entering the live combat sports world for the first time. Traditional MMA promotions like the UFC operate like finely tuned machines built around years of live broadcasting experience. But Netflix was stepping into unfamiliar territory where unpredictability can instantly disrupt production plans. The commentators explained how unusual it felt trying to maintain momentum after such rapid finishes, especially during a globally historic event carrying X faced while entering the live combat sports world for the first time. Traditional MMA promotions like the UFC operate like finely tuned machines built around years of live broadcasting experience. But Netflix was stepping into unfamiliar territory where unpredictability can instantly disrupt production plans. The commentators explained how unusual it felt trying to maintain momentum after such rapid finishes, especially during a globally historic event carrying enormous expectations. Yet despite the chaos, the emotional reactions from those working the broadcast remained overwhelmingly positive. One commentator repeatedly described the night as the most fun he had ever experienced in his entire career. That statement carried significant weight because it demonstrated how meaningful the event felt from the inside, regardless of public criticism or complaints about pacing. To the people involved, this wasn't merely another fight card. It was a cultural breakthrough proving MMA had officially entered mainstream entertainment at the highest possible level. The personal stories attached to the event only intensified the emotional impact. Gina Carano's heartbreaking defeat became one of the most talked about aspects of the night because fans deeply connected with her comeback journey. The commentators described her being devastated backstage after dedicating over a year and a half to preparing for this moment. They spoke about the sacrifices she made, the physical transformation she underwent, and the emotional healing she experienced by reconnecting with martial arts again. That perspective humanized her loss beyond the result itself. Suddenly, the fight wasn't only about 17 seconds inside the cage. It became about dreams, expectations, redemption, and the brutal reality that years of preparation can disappear in moments inside combat sports. Many viewers felt emotionally attached to Gina's journey and wanted a longer fight, not necessarily because they doubted Ronda's greatness, but because they wanted Gina's story to have more chapters before ending. That emotional void created fertile ground for debate online. Was Ronda's quick submission the ultimate display of elite skill, or did it rob fans of the dramatic showdown they had been promised? Opinions divided instantly. Some celebrated the efficiency and dominance, while others argued the main event failed to deliver the spectacle expected from such massive promotion. Jake Paul's involvement only intensified the discourse because he represents the modern influencer-driven side of combat sports where controversy, reactions, and engagement often overshadow the actual athletic performances themselves. His comments fueled the idea that entertainment value now carries equal importance to competitive excellence. The entire situation highlighted a larger shift happening within MMA and combat sports overall. Streaming giants like Netflix are changing how fans consume fights, how narratives spread online, and how fighters build mainstream popularity. Viral moments, social media debates, and crossover celebrity attention now shape public perception just as much as championship belts or technical.
And so to get that opportunity tonight for Netflix on a card like this with names like we saw on this card, almost exactly 10 years to the day of UFC 199 in the same city.
Skill. The event symbolized the collision between old-school MMA culture and the modern influencer era where every outcome immediately becomes content for millions of viewers online. Yet beneath all the controversy, emotional reactions, and hot takes remained a deeper truth that many fans recognized. The night represented a massive milestone for combat sports. It showcased how far MMA has come over the last decade, evolving from a sport once criticized and marginalized into global entertainment capable of commanding one of the largest streaming audiences on Earth. The commentators' overwhelming emotions reflected that reality perfectly. Their passion wasn't manufactured. Their excitement wasn't fake. They genuinely understood the significance of what they were experiencing. For them, the event represented years of work finally receiving worldwide recognition. Even the imperfections, the awkward pacing, the rapid finishes, and the divided fan reactions somehow added authenticity to the night because they reminded viewers how unpredictable and emotionally raw live combat sports can be. Nothing is scripted. Nothing is guaranteed. A fight promoted for months can end in seconds. A comeback story can collapse instantly. A dominant champion can simultaneously impress and disappoint millions of people watching around the world. That unpredictability is exactly what keeps audiences emotionally invested. Ronda Rousey's victory became more than just a submission win. It became a symbol of dominance, controversy, nostalgia, and debate all at once. Gina Carano's loss became more than defeat. It became a story about resilience, sacrifice, and heartbreak. Jake Paul's reaction became more than social media commentary. It reflected the growing influence of internet personalities in shaping combat sports narratives. And Netflix's first MMA event became more than a broadcast. It became a statement about the future of sports entertainment itself. The night proved that MMA has fully entered the streaming era where fights are no longer confined to traditional pay-per-view audiences. Now every knockout, every submission, every emotional reaction can instantly become a worldwide viral moment viewed by millions. That reality creates both incredible opportunities and enormous pressure for fighters, promoters, commentators, and broadcasters alike. In the end, the event succeeded because people couldn't stop talking about it. Some loved it. Some criticized it. Some felt inspired while others felt underwhelmed. But everyone had an opinion, and in today's digital landscape, that level of engagement is ultimately what defines a truly unforgettable spectacle. Alex Pereira's potential move to heavyweight has completely shaken the MMA world, and the closer people get to him behind the scenes, the more terrifying the reality becomes. Fighters, analysts, and even longtime veterans of the sport are beginning to realize that this may not simply be another champion changing weight classes. This could be the creation of an
Allow me to explain. They're telling me in my ear, because the fights are going very, very quick. They're telling me keep going, because this is the way they block things out. The UFC is a well-oiled machine, and they do things a certain way that we're all very used to because we consume it every week.
Entirely different monster inside the UFC. When footage first emerged of Pereira standing beside natural heavyweights while weighing over 240 pounds, fans were stunned by how natural the size looked on him. Usually when fighters move up in weight, especially into heavyweight, there's an obvious physical trade-off. They become slower, less explosive, and lose the movement that originally made them dangerous. But according to people training with Pereira, the opposite seems to be happening. Instead of looking bloated or sluggish, he looks stronger, more stable, and somehow even more intimidating than before. One fighter described him as a 205-pound fighter with a heavyweight build, which perfectly explains why so many people believe this division could become terrifyingly dangerous if Pereira fully commits to it. The scariest part isn't simply the extra weight. It's the fact that he still moves like a light heavyweight while carrying heavyweight power. That combination almost never exists in combat sports. Fighters who hit that hard usually sacrifice speed, while fighters who move quickly often lack devastating knockout force. Pereira appears to possess both simultaneously, and that reality has created enormous discussion surrounding a possible fight with Cyril Gane. The matchup itself feels like a collision between two completely different styles of striking. On one side you have Pereira, a calculated destroyer known for his terrifying left hook, brutal calf kicks, and ability to shut opponents' lights off with a single clean shot. On the other side stands Cyril Gane, arguably one of the smoothest and most technical heavyweight strikers the division has ever seen. Gane moves unlike a traditional heavyweight. His footwork resembles a middleweight, constantly gliding around the cage, creating angles, and frustrating opponents with movement and feints. Several fighters pointed out that Gane's mobility could become a major problem for Pereira because Alex traditionally performs best when pressuring opponents backward and forcing exchanges. Against someone as elusive as Gane, those opportunities may not appear as frequently. Yet others believe Pereira's pressure and devastating calf kicks could completely change the dynamic of the fight. His ability to destroy movement by attacking the legs has become one of the deadliest weapons in the UFC. Fighters who rely on footwork suddenly become stationary after eating repeated calf kicks from Pereira, and once opponents stop moving freely, Alex becomes lethal. Training partners have admitted that even light sparring sessions with him carry an intimidating aura because every strike feels dangerous. One fighter joked that sparring Pereira gives him PTSD, and while it was said humorously, it reflected the genuine fear many athletes feel when sharing the cage with him. What makes the situation even more fascinating is how disciplined Pereira has reportedly been during his transition toward heavyweight. According to people inside his camp, he isn't simply eating more food and adding random size. Everything is being managed with precision. Every meal, every workout, and every pound of added muscle has reportedly been calculated carefully to preserve his athleticism. Fighters often struggle during heavyweight transitions because the added mass changes their endurance and mobility, but Pereira seems to be avoiding those issues entirely. Observers noted that he still looks lean, explosive, and incredibly athletic despite weighing nearly 250 pounds. Some even compared his...
That was the only real thing that I saw that, I thought was worth addressing. But I got to tell you right here now, that was the most fun that I've ever had in my career. The most fun. As far as fights are concerned, I don't know if I've ever had more fun doing the post-fight interviews and going to the desk and working with all these great people. So I want to get that out of the way.
Physique to a carved statue, saying he looked more dangerous than ever before. That image alone has fueled endless speculation about what kind of destruction Pereira could unleash if he successfully adapts to heavyweight competition. Fans have already seen him become a world champion across multiple divisions while knocking out elite fighters at middleweight and light heavyweight. Now people are imagining that same devastating power attached to an even larger and stronger frame. The thought alone is enough to create fear throughout the division. Joe Rogan and several analysts openly discussed how terrifying Pereira's punching power could become at heavyweight, emphasizing that he already knocks out world-class fighters at lower weights. If that same precision and timing translate upward, heavyweight opponents may be dealing with one of the hardest punchers the sport has ever seen. One analyst even compared him to movie villains who destroy everything they touch, saying, "Whatever Alex Pereira hits, he destroys." That statement may sound exaggerated, but his recent performances make it difficult to dismiss. At the same time, not everyone is convinced Pereira dominates instantly at heavyweight. Some fighters believe Cyril Gane remains the more complete striker overall because of his movement, versatility, and unpredictability. Gane's ability to stay mobile while throwing combinations could force Pereira into uncomfortable situations he hasn't faced before. Several observers noted that Pereira can appear somewhat stationary compared to Gane's constant movement, and without elite wrestling skills, cutting off the cage against someone as dynamic as Gane becomes extremely difficult. Gane doesn't simply stand in front of opponents trading punches. He uses distance management, feints, and lateral movement to create frustration, and that style has caused problems for nearly everyone he has faced. Some believe Pereira's pressure-heavy style may struggle if Gane successfully keeps him chasing for extended periods. Others argue that heavyweight striking is different entirely because one clean shot can instantly change everything. Pereira doesn't need to dominate rounds technically if he lands a single devastating left hook or calf kick that compromises movement. That uncertainty is exactly why the matchup has generated so much excitement. Nobody truly knows how Pereira's style will translate against elite heavyweight movement, and nobody fully understands how terrifying his power could become with additional size behind it. Beyond the stylistic intrigue, there's also the historical significance surrounding Pereira's ambitions. If he eventually captures the heavyweight, the more fighters and analysts continue breaking down the brutal war between Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland, the more insane the fight actually starts to look. What originally seemed like a simple debate over who won has now evolved into one of the most controversial and deeply analyzed middleweight battles in recent MMA history. Joe Rogan, Michael Bisping, Chael Sonnen, Demetrius Johnson, and several other respected voices in the sport all came away with completely different conclusions about what truly happened inside that.
In the end, as you know, Ronda Rousey won in 17 seconds, and I can understand if people feel underwhelmed by that. I think, a lot of people would feel underwhelmed. You wanted to see a scrap. But to me...
Cage. Some believed Khamzat's early wrestling dominance secured him the victory, while others argued Sean Strickland's pressure, cardio, damage, and late-round momentum completely shifted the fight in his favor. But beyond the scorecards and the official result, what really captured everyone's attention was how dramatically the fight changed once Khamzat started slowing down. Rogan immediately pointed to the moment in the second round where Khamzat failed on a takedown attempt and suddenly dropped to his back. To Rogan, that moment was massive because it looked like Chimiv's body was beginning to shut down in real time. Rogan explained that Khamzat likely exploded too hard in the opening round trying to overwhelm Strickland early and then realized he didn't have the gas tank to sustain that pace for 5 rounds. According to Rogan, the decision to stay on his back may not have been panic but survival. He believed Khamzat understood that if he forced himself into extended striking exchanges while exhausted, Strickland's relentless pressure would eventually drown him. That observation completely changed how many fans viewed the fight because suddenly Khamzat's grappling-heavy strategy looked less like domination and more like energy management. Rogan repeatedly emphasized how brutal weight cutting has become in MMA, calling it one of the dumbest traditions still allowed in combat sports. He argued that fighters aren't truly competing at their official weight classes anymore because the actual fight night size difference can be enormous. Sean Strickland, despite competing at middleweight, reportedly entered the cage looking physically bigger than Khamzat, which shocked many people considering Chimiv's reputation for overwhelming opponents with sheer physicality. Rogan suggested that Khamzat's difficult weight cut may have directly contributed to the exhaustion fans witnessed later in the fight. According to discussions surrounding the camp, Chimiv had bulked up significantly during preparation, possibly weighing over 230 pounds before eventually forcing himself back down to middleweight. Rogan and Bisping both described how dangerous extreme muscle cuts can become because muscle tissue is far harder to dehydrate compared to body fat. Unlike fighters who gain softer weight between bouts, heavily muscled athletes often push their bodies into dangerous territory when trying to shed massive amounts quickly. Rogan explained that once your body adapts to carrying that much muscle mass, shrinking it rapidly becomes almost impossible without severe starvation or brutal dehydration. Michael Bisping went even further, claiming there were moments during the cut where Khamzat's body allegedly stopped functioning properly and his team had to pause the process entirely due to health concerns. According to Bisping, Chimiv reportedly experienced severe oxygen deprivation while trying to make weight, a terrifying situation that highlighted how dangerous modern MMA weight cutting has become. For Bisping, the exhaustion visible in later rounds wasn't surprising at all because Khamzat's body may have already been compromised before the fight even began. However, not everyone accepted those explanations. Chael Sonnen completely rejected the idea that Khamzat lost an impossible amount of weight in such a short time frame.
This felt very quick, and there's a feeling of unfulfillment because you want to see just how good Gina is and how far she's come. And you know, I wish it went a little bit longer. I wish we got at least 60 seconds in exchange. But Ronda's really good, and that's why I kept asking her, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? And she maintains this is it. She maintains this is it. And so,
arguing that the numbers being discussed simply didn't make mathematical sense. Sonnen expressed frustration that so many fans instantly accepted exaggerated weight-cutting stories without questioning the science behind them. According to Chael, even elite athletes with perfect discipline cannot realistically lose over 40 pounds of real weight within a week. He believed the dramatic stories surrounding Khamzat's weight cut became excuses used to explain why he faded later in the fight. Chael insisted that cutting weight is undeniably difficult, but the extreme claims floating around social media were unrealistic and misleading. Still, regardless of how much weight Khamzat truly lost, nearly everyone agreed that his conditioning became one of the central storylines of the fight. Sean O'Malley admitted he was nervous for Strickland early because Khamzat's opening takedowns looked terrifyingly easy. Sean's upright boxing stance appeared vulnerable to wrestling attacks, and for a moment it seemed like Chimiv might completely dominate him on the ground. Yet O'Malley quickly noticed something important. Despite controlling positions, Khamzat wasn't inflicting devastating damage. As the fight progressed into the later rounds, O'Malley began observing Chimiv's body language changing dramatically. The explosiveness started fading. The takedowns became slower. The pressure decreased. Meanwhile, Sean Strickland looked calmer and more comfortable with every passing minute. O'Malley pointed out that Strickland thrives in ugly, grinding fights where opponents slowly drown under his pace and pressure. That exact dynamic seemed to emerge as Khamzat's energy levels declined. Demetrius Johnson also focused heavily on the moment Chimaev suddenly pulled guard after failing to complete another takedown. To DJ, that sequence represented a major psychological shift because Khamzat appeared to realize Sean wasn't going to mentally break. Johnson believed Chimaev experienced a massive adrenaline dump after the opening chaos of the fight. Once Strickland survived the early storm and continued marching forward unfazed, the momentum started changing entirely. DJ even suggested that Khamzat may actually train too hard outside competition, pushing his body beyond the point of diminishing returns. According to Johnson, there comes a stage where overtraining hurts cardio more than it helps because the body can only absorb so much punishment before performance suffers. That theory resonated with many fans because Khamzat has built a reputation for brutal gym sessions and non-stop intensity during training camps. Yet what made the fight truly unforgettable wasn't simply Khamzat fading. It was Sean Strickland's incredible ability to become stronger as the fight continued. Joe Rogan repeatedly praised Strickland's conditioning, calling him the captain of deep waters because of how dangerous he becomes once opponents get tired. Rogan highlighted how Sean consistently
at the hotel, she's heartbroken, and understandably so. She just worked for a year and a half to get to this point, lost 100 pounds. She wanted so much more. She wanted so much more, and so my heart breaks for her. But as I said to her, I feel like
pressures fighters late into bouts, taunting them, talking to them, and forcing uncomfortable exchanges while maintaining relentless forward pressure. He compared it to Strickland's performance against Israel Adesanya, where Sean appeared to gain confidence and momentum as the fight progressed while Izzy visibly slowed down after taking heavy damage early. Rogan described the clean right hand Strickland landed against Adesanya as one of the most devastating punches of Sean's career, explaining how difficult it becomes for any fighter to recover fully after suffering that level of concussion damage. Those observations fed directly into the debate surrounding Strickland's overall toughness and durability. Rogan argued that Sean's style looks deceptively simple from the outside, yet almost nobody can deal with it comfortably inside the cage. Fighters think they can hit him because of his upright stance and unusual defensive shell, but once the fight starts, they discover how difficult he is to control. Rogan praised Strickland's underrated grappling repeatedly, emphasizing that Sean refused to stay pinned down for long periods and even reversed positions multiple times later in the fight. One of the biggest talking points became the fact that Strickland allegedly fought Khamzat with a severely compromised shoulder. Rogan pointed out that Sean's right hand looked awkward throughout parts of the bout, almost as if he was consciously avoiding certain movements to protect the injury. According to discussions on the podcast, Strickland had damaged the shoulder in a dirt bike accident before the fight yet still accepted the matchup. Rogan argued that many fans focused exclusively on Khamzat's weight cut struggles, while ignoring that Sean essentially competed with one functional arm. Even with the injury, Strickland reportedly managed to wobble Chimaev badly during one exchange, a moment Rogan considered among the most significant strikes landed in the entire fight. That added another layer to the argument because it suggested Sean may have performed far below full health while still surviving Khamzat's dangerous wrestling attack. As the final rounds unfolded, social media exploded with divided opinions. Some viewers scored the fight for Chimaev based on his early control and takedowns. Others believed Strickland's pressure, defense, and late momentum clearly deserved the victory. Journalists, fighters, coaches, and analysts all seemed split directly down the middle. Rogan admitted he personally leaned toward Strickland because of Sean's ability to survive the worst moments and continue pushing forward. What fascinated fans most was how unpredictable the momentum swings became. Early in the fight, it looked like Khamzat might completely overwhelm Sean physically. Yet by the championship rounds, Strickland appeared fresher, sharper, and increasingly confident while Chimaev looked exhausted and frustrated. The contrast created one of the most dramatic momentum shifts.
Meaningless, but for her, she did so much good, healing that wound, getting to a place where she is happy and healthy and loves the sport again, loves martial arts. It's just a beautiful thing. So yes, I can understand if you feel
faced while entering the live combat sports world for the first time. Traditional MMA promotions like the UFC operate like finely tuned machines built around years of live broadcasting experience. But Netflix was stepping into unfamiliar territory where unpredictability can instantly disrupt production plans. The commentators explained how unusual it felt trying to maintain momentum after such rapid finishes, especially during a globally historic event carrying enormous expectations. Yet despite the chaos, the emotional reactions from those working the broadcast remained overwhelmingly positive. One commentator repeatedly described the night as the most fun he had ever experienced in his entire career. That statement carried significant weight because it demonstrated how meaningful the event felt from the inside, regardless of public criticism or complaints about pacing. To the people involved, this wasn't merely another fight card. It was a cultural breakthrough proving MMA had officially entered mainstream entertainment at the highest possible level. The personal stories attached to the event only intensified the emotional impact. Gina Carano's heartbreaking defeat became one of the most talked about aspects of the night because fans deeply connected with her comeback journey. The commentators described her being devastated backstage after dedicating over a year and a half to preparing for this moment. They spoke about the sacrifices she made, the physical transformation she underwent, and the emotional healing she experienced by reconnecting with martial arts again. That perspective humanized her loss beyond the result itself. Suddenly, the fight wasn't only about 17 seconds inside the cage. It became about dreams, expectations, redemption, and the brutal reality that years of preparation can disappear in moments inside combat sports. Many viewers felt emotionally attached to Gina's journey and wanted a longer fight, not necessarily because they doubted Ronda's greatness, but because they wanted Gina's story to have more chapters before ending. That emotional void created fertile ground for debate online. Was Ronda's quick submission the ultimate display of elite skill, or did it rob fans of the dramatic showdown they had been promised? Opinions divided instantly. Some celebrated the efficiency and dominance, while others argued the main event failed to deliver the spectacle expected from such massive promotion. Jake Paul's involvement only intensified the discourse because he represents the modern influencer-driven side of combat sports where controversy, reactions,